Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for morning prayer. Thank you for joining me for this reflection. Today we're going to talk about Psalm 111. In particular, we're going to talk about verse 10 because it has a tendency to drive people nuts. It drives people insane. This, what it says, Psalm 111, verse 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That idea of fear is not easy to juggle when it comes to God. I mean, how many times on this channel have you heard me say, we don't have to be afraid of God. God's not waiting to punish us. God's not waiting to rain down hell and terror upon us. God's not waiting to throw God's wrath at us, right? I believe that. I believe that because as a Christian, I believe that through Jesus Christ, all is forgiven, all is redeemed, and we are moving forward together in such a way that we don't ever have to be connected from God again. And if you read the Old Testament, the only time God ever punished anybody was to reconnect. Not getting into all that, the bottom line, it comes back to fear. Why is it as a Christian that I would look at this passage and read it and learn from it? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So what? I should be afraid, and therefore I'll behave? No. That's not what it's about. It's not what it's about at all. I don't actually know if there's a word in the English language that describes what the word fear in this passage actually means. Now, I'm not a Hebrew scholar. Perhaps the word fear is exactly what they were using at that time. But looking at that verse from a Christian perspective, through a Christian lens, it means something different than being scared. It means something different than having a person in your life that you have to cower from. It means something different than terror. It also doesn't necessarily mean respect. The best thing I can do, I'm going to share a couple of stories. I was thinking about this week, and these are the things that came up for me. When I was 13 or 14, we had this big, massive German Shepherd. He was huge. His name was Duke. We didn't want Duke. He was my uncle's dog. But when my uncle passed away, we took Duke in. And I would have to walk him. I never walked him near enough. But when I would walk him, he was a big animal. Now, I'm very thankful my uncle, before he passed, he showed me how to walk him. He showed me how to discipline him. He showed me how to keep him under control. But one day, Duke and I were walking past a school. And in the field, the soccer field, the Air Force Cadet Corps in Miramichi were practicing. They were just getting ready to practice as we walked up. But as we sort of passed the field, they started playing their drums and their cymbals. And that dog lost its mind. Now, he was probably 110 pounds. I was probably 150. And he tore me around that field. It felt to me like he dragged me for a mile. Obviously, it wouldn't have been that far. But he ran and he ran and he ran with my hand in that lead until he felt safe. Was I afraid of Duke after that? No. Am I afraid of dogs today? No. There is no fear of animals or of dogs, or was there of Duke after that moment? That moment taught me that Duke had an internal power that I needed to be aware of. There was an internal strength about him. There was an animalistic sense that, his instinct would always be stronger than the obedience that I was trying to offer him. And I needed to be aware of that. And when I walked him, I needed to walk him knowing and understanding that this animal, this dog, was capable of much more than it appeared. That he was capable of a strength, he was capable of a drive, that for me to walk him in a way that was safe for both of us, I needed to be aware of and I needed to acknowledge. The other story, you all know I love camping, is a campfire. Right? Campfires are wonderful with s'mores and sausages and hamburgers and all the other stuff that you can cook on there. And half the stuff, lately it seems like everything goes back to food for me. But you need to be careful around a campfire. You don't have to be afraid of it. You don't have to, live in abject terror of it, that a campfire is going to burst out of control. But when you light it, when you set it, you need to be careful that you don't burn yourself. You need to be careful of the people around you. Don't get burnt. You need to be careful that the embers don't float up into the sky and into the trees and light a forest fire. You need to be aware of all these things that are going on. You need to acknowledge all these things about the possibility of this fire, about the internal strength that this fire has, about what this fire could do in certain situations. And you need to conduct yourself accordingly. One of the great examples, I think, comes from C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. In it, the children are talking to, I can't remember if he's a dwarf or an elf or one of the creatures. And the creature's telling the kids about Aslan. Aslan, of course, is the Christ figure in the book, this massive lion. And they say, oh, so Aslan's a tame lion. And the creature says, no. Aslan is not a tame lion. He's a wild lion. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, because we need to recognize that in God there is this strength, there is this power, there is this drive. There is nothing tame about God. We, however, can walk with God because of what Christ has offered us. We can walk with God and not be afraid of God because of what Christ has offered us. We can walk with God and not be afraid of God when we are walking with our neighbors with love and tenderness and mercy and compassion and charity, because these are the things that God calls us to. We can walk with God without being terrified and afraid of God, because when we walk with love, love is God. That might be an interesting reflection someday. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The beginning of wisdom is recognizing that there are things in this universe outside of our understanding, outside of our control, outside of our power. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you, and may you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray that our wisdom continues to grow as we are brave enough, courageous enough to acknowledge that there are things in this world, things in this universe, bigger, more powerful than we can imagine. Amen.